All right, guys, welcome back to the Survivor Indianapolis YouTube channel here for another breakdown. Not breakdown at all. Just a reaction to the episode 6 of Survivor 50. And we will get quickly into the fantasy update and breakdown. I feel like my camera is all over the place. I don't know what's going on. It doesn't matter. So I really liked the episode, especially the end. Um, I thought that, I've said this before, so if you've been listening to any of these, then you know that I said that I would rather the production speed up in the middle of the game than any other position. Like if it's beginning, middle, or end, what section of the game do I want them to like really be voting off players one after the other? It would be the middle. It would not be the beginning or the end because that I think the end could really dramatically impact the gameplay and who wins. I think the beginning would shortchange some players that like this is 50. You want to give everyone their due. And speaking of that, I mean this episode did that for Colby, which I thought was really awesome. But I think that with any time they're going to speed up the game, this is going to have issues in terms of like telling everyone's story and giving them their own fair shake and feeling like you really got to see this person's perspective. Like if you're Camilla and Genevieve, do you really feel like this episode told the story of why you lost? Maybe it does. Maybe you feel like it does. Maybe you feel like it doesn't. For Genevieve, she's had, weeks of content between the stuff with her and Aubrey. Camilla has been probably under edited and then gets into this episode and one of her allies turns on her and she is surprised by that. And so we don't get a, I don't feel like we get a full picture of the situation there, which comes with the territory. If we're talking about voting off three people in 2 hours, you're not going to be able to tell the full story. Um, so to some extent, it is what it is. I did feel like the random like three groups of five were not very interesting, and I'm assuming it was random. I don't, I know they have to do certain things to match up to. There's like a group of people that make sure that game shows are fair, um, to like cover their butts for lawsuits and stuff. And so, I'm gonna, give them the benefit of the doubt and just assume that it actually was random, but it didn't really work out for good TV because it was like, oh, it's probably gonna be Colby or Coach in one of them. The other one, it was like it's probably gonna be Genevieve because unless they believe she has something, and then they might vote Joe, I guess. But they spent like 2 seconds covering that part of the storyline, so I was like, well, that's not gonna happen. And then the other one, it was like it's probably Camilla or Chrissy, but it kind of felt like it was being told from Chrissy's point of view. And so I was like, well, it's probably going to be Camilla then. Um, so not the most interesting strategy wise. It does set up for a big merge. I mean, we were like, no one believed, I don't think, if you actually believed they were going to have a true merge with everybody up for elimination except for like one person and this huge 17-person tribal council. I don't know what to tell you, but now we have 14. So, do they go to 7 and 7 and go to two groups or do they do like the classic mergatory? I say classic kind of disparagingly, but um I don't know. We'll see. I would love to see just a 14-person tribal council. I think that would be fun, and you could always do a twist later on to kind of speed things up, but um, it wouldn't be a bad idea to slow down for a little while, I think. But I also would rather than speed up this middle section than speed up the end of the game. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I felt like for Camilla, it's unfortunate. Wasn't super invested in her story this season. Yeah, I really liked her in 48. Um, was happy she was back out of all the people that I was like, because there was a lot of new era players cast in general. I thought 12 was maybe too many. I might have gone with like 9. I could see maybe even 10. And Camilla was not one that I was like, oh, why is she on there? It was more like Joe. And I think for the 49 people, Rizzo, even though Rizzo's been really, really good so far, I've enjoyed watching him. Um, it's difficult to it's difficult to predict how they're going to do from 49 to 50, and Savannah was gone in a heartbeat, and it sounds like she would have been gone the first vote if Jenna had just like come in and played chill and been like calm, cool, and collected. Then it might have been Savannah right off the bat. So um you know, but again, all that to say, Camilla is not somebody who I was like, well, why is she here? Um, but this season didn't really give me a reason to be invested in her gameplay and what she was doing in this season. And I hate that for her. I don't blame her for that. I just hate that for her because if I was her, I don't know that I would feel satisfied in how my story was shown for this season. And I get it, there's 24 people, like somebody's the odds of several people being short shrifted in the edit is high. I talked a little bit last week about how it seems at this point to be mostly the women, and that has held true so far. Um, you know, but that doesn't mean I don't still, you know, what number one, feel bad for her. Number two, also not super care when she gets voted off. And both can be true. If you're a big fan of hers, then obviously you'd be upset that she's voted off. And I enjoyed her gameplay a lot in her first season in 48. I would not have at all been mad if she won. In fact, I would have rathered her win than Joe and probably Eva too. And it was like if it wasn't going to be Kyle or her, then I guess maybe third I'd want Shaheen. But I think I would have rather Camilla win than Shaheen. So I just at the end of the day, if it wasn't Kyle, I think I wanted her I wanted her to win second most. So I was a fan of hers and enjoyed her season, and so I don't think that's why I don't think this is her fault. You know what I mean? And everyone that's voting her out is like, oh, she's sneaky and she's so she's doing stuff. You know what I mean? They just didn't want to show it for some reason. So one of the theories that I saw was that she was like trash talking some of the stuff that was happening, like Zach Brown. Like if she's like making fun of Zach Brown and who cares about Zach Brown, whatever, whatever, and they wanted it to be this big celebration of Zach Brown, then they're not going to show any of those confessionals. So maybe she was doing stuff like that she didn't realize was going to get her under edited. Um, but again, I wouldn't blame her for that. I would say the show has to tell the story of the season, and you know, it's Survivor, so it is what it is. But yeah, and I feel pretty similarly about I mean, Colby. It's more the historical perspective on Colby. I wish he was on the jury. I wish Camilla was on the jury. Um, I would rather Camilla and Colby be on the jury than like you know Stephanie, obviously. Number one. But there's probably some other people too I could think of. But Stephanie's just the most obvious one that I'm like, yeah, I don't need her on the jury. Um, and for Genevieve, it wasn't. I enjoyed her in her first season. I just feel like she plays too hard. And that was kind of her problem the first time, and that was her problem this time too. I think that like yes, she got kind of like swap screwed for lack of a better term. It was like she was the default option because everybody else was either on the same starting tribe or was given an idol as a like an olive branch, so to speak, by the people that were on the same starting tribe, right? So it was because Joe, and it's easy to forget with all this stuff that's been happening. Joe started on the same tribe with Rick and Christian, and they worked together for multiple votes. And they didn't seem to even talk in the edit this episode, but like they did because Joe voted with them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Genevieve was like, yeah, just go with them if you think they're gonna do that. I'll play my shot in the dark, whatever. Um, and so it's like when it seems inevitable, number one, and number two, it feels like she's playing too hard, and it's like kind of like not only is it inevitable in the episode, but it seemed inevitable big picture because it was like I don't know how this can keep up, how this cannot get back and bite her in the butt when she's talking to everybody all the time bad about Aubrey, like all the time. And again, this is the edit, so Aubrey might be doing the exact same thing. And I honestly don't feel great about Aubrey's chances to win the game either. So I'm not saying that Genevieve was wrong and Aubrey was right. I'm just saying Genevieve was wrong. And we'll see what happens from here. But and then for Colby, it's just I'm not at all surprised that Colby didn't win the game. It's just like he's one of the godfather, grandfather type figures of the show Survivor. The OGs, so to speak, and I think they gave him his flowers as he deserved. And it was an emotional tribal council. I was kind of surprised at how emotional it was, um, because, and I wonder how much it was like kind of almost just accepted, like if they did at some point come to a consensus of like this is what's going to happen, which makes me curious as to why Coach is so ticked off in the next time on Survivor, because I don't think he was close with Genevieve. He wasn't on the same starting tribe as Genevieve. I don't Were they on the same swap tribe? I don't even remember. And I don't think he was close with Camilla because Camilla wasn't on the same original tribe with him, was she? I'm trying to remember. Maybe she, no, because she was on Jonathan's tribe, which was not Coach's tribe to start off. So I don't know why he's upset, but maybe that's a whole new thing. But um, yeah, just the Coach and Colby and Suri talking about uh just all that Survivor gave to them and how honored and everything they are to be a part of Survivor as a thing and like to have been influential figures and how it did also influence them and all that stuff. I think it's super interesting and and was emotional. It was very emotional. As a fan of Survivor, it was very emotional. So, overall, good end to the episode. I'm excited for what's to come, but this wasn't the most entertaining 2 hours. I'm glad it was 2 hours, not 3 hours. Holy cow! And it didn't help that the challenge was a very simple challenge and just very straightforward. And also, it didn't help that like nothing else happened on the edge of extinction. On not edge of extinction, thank God, on Exile Island. That nothing else happened on Exile Island. It was just like we're on exile and we're not going to go to tribal council. See you next week. It was like, okay, I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know. Like, I just saw him for like 5 minutes and less than that probably. And then it was like an hour and a half later. We haven't gone back to exile to see how Ozzy and Rizzo are doing, or what they're doing. They're just sitting around, I guess. So, it's fine in the big picture. It just kind of leads to it seems like an episode whose sole purpose was to mostly just get rid of three people in as quick as time as possible. And then number two, to give, Colby his flowers, which is, I'm fine with that. So, all right, with that, let's go ahead and get into the fantasy scoring update and see where we are. And so, generally. Standings haven't wildly changed too much. We've got uh, in last place Brooke with 249. I don't know if she was last time or not, but she was already on the ropes, and then she lost Camilla and Genevieve. I mean, I feel like it's been like 3 or 4 of the 6 weeks that I've come on here and been like, oh, brutal week for Brooke. It's like I don't know. It is not great. I think that even if Suri wins, I don't think she can win this game at this point. It could definitely be wrong. I mean, it's not impossible, I guess, but it would be pretty unlikely, obviously. And then ninth is Alyssa, who also I feel pretty similarly about. She's only 4 points higher, and again, like Brooke, lost two more players this week. Um, Stephanie had a great week, had a huge week. Suri had a pretty good week, but I think even if one of them wins at this point, I mean, at this point, both her and Brooke are like 150 points behind. Um, right? I'm trying to think. I haven't told the audience yet who's in first or how many points they have, but I already know it's 143 points more than Alyssa. So 100 and like what's Brooke at? So it's 147 or 100, yeah, 47 points. So almost 150 points. Um, that's it's probably at this point probably too much, and we don't know how many episodes. I mean we probably do know how many episodes the season's gonna have. I just put 15 just like as a random number because wouldn't put it past them for 50 to be a longer season, but usually there's somewhere between 11 and 13, I think. So that'll probably be where we end up, probably 12 or 13, which is gonna be kind of crazy to get down to 3 players by then, but. Um, that's where they're at. And then the next jump up to eighth place is a significant jump because it's Ben, and you can see there's 41 points between the two of them. So Ben's, basically a third closer to first place, a third of that gap. But he did lose Colby. So tough spot for Ben as well. Christian and D had great weeks, and they're the kind of players that could have great weeks for a long time. And so maybe he could catch up. And if Christian and D, if one of them wins and the other one of them is like fifth, does he have a shot? Probably, maybe. I don't know. It's obviously still it's obviously still a long shot though. Um, and then next in sixth is Alex. And he had a fantastic week, given his position coming into the week. He had 47 points, so which was um, also sixth, right? Let me see, three, six, seventh, seventh. He's seventh. He's in seventh place and had the seventh most points for the week. However, he was only 6 points behind the next person for points in the week, and 10 points behind the fifth place person in points for the week. Um, and so pretty good week, right? Didn't lose any players. So not just a good week in terms of holding his ground, but a good week in terms of trying to catch up. Like this week he didn't catch up a bunch. I don't think he may have been behind Ben. I don't really know to be honest. He probably wasn't. I don't know. 47, 36, 47 and 43, so 4 points and he is 5 points ahead, so he was already ahead of Ben by a point or two. Um, but he's pushed a little bit further, and you know, Alyssa, Ben, and Brooke, all the people below him lost at least one player, so they're all down to one, two, or three players, and Alex lost four. So he's in a tough spot, but he's in the position where I kind of thought. Ben and Alyssa and Brooke were a week or two ago where I was like, sure, they have 4 or 5 players, but if they can keep those 4 or 5 players for a long time, they can get back into the game. Well, for Brooke, Alyssa, and Ben, that didn't happen. But for Alex, it has for a week or two, for 2 weeks now, right? 2 weeks he hasn't lost anybody. So if he can keep it going for a few more weeks, we'll see. Um, so then the next place is now we're at sixth. Alex was seven and that's Ellie, and she is a decent jump up. So like 10 and 9 are close, 8 and 7 are close, and then there's a decent jump up to 6. And that's again, like I said, Ellie, she is at 320 and had a good week, 59. She was actually the fourth. She's in sixth place, but had the fourth best week. So really good week for Ellie. Um, Even though she lost probably last week, strong week point wise. Again, fourth for the week and she's in sixth place overall. Rizzo, Ozzy, Tiffany, three big players didn't have anybody that won immunity, which is 6 points this week. Um, and I think it's 6 points. Let me double check. I think it's six. Winning individual reward, win individual immunity. 6 points. Yeah. So she didn't have any of those players, but had two people that got to go on exile, which gives you a couple points. Um, it had people that had lots of confessionals. Tiffany had a huge her big episode so far, which I don't know if that bodes well or not for her. I hope it does, but we'll see. So good week for Ellie. Fifth place is Cameron. He had less points actually than Ellie, but um, had still had a very good week and was already ahead of Ellie. So and he is 29 points ahead. So it's kind of a little bit of a jump here to fifth place, um, with that again that 29-point difference there, uh, separating Cameron and Ellie. And Cameron, Chrissy had her biggest episode. Stephanie had her by far her biggest episode. Ozzy had a huge episode. Rick had a good episode. Yes, the negative is moving forward, Colby is gone, so Cameron's down to 4 players. So like Alex, Cameron has 4 left. And if Cameron can get, a few weeks, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks without losing anybody, then he has a shot to really make a run for it. Um, but if not, he could end up similar to, Ben, Alyssa, and Brooke, where it's more of a long shot, right? If not impossible to win. In fourth, though, is Noah. Again, a little bit of a jump, 362, so 13 points there. And Noah actually had the sixth best week. So not a great week from Noah. Also lost 2 players after losing Mike 2 weeks ago. Had a strong week last week in terms of not losing anybody. Didn't have a great points week, but didn't lose anybody. And then he had a better points week this week, but lost 2 players. Tough draw for Noah and a big opportunity for Ellie and Cameron to try to jump him. Cameron has to make up 13 points, which in one week can happen, but it could be difficult. And Ellie would have to make up 42 points, so probably not going to happen in one week, but in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, definitely could happen. And now Noah is in a similar spot to Cameron, where you just lost a couple of people. Cameron just lost two, right? I'm trying to double check and make sure. Cameron just lost Colby, so he's down to four, but he didn't lose two. Noah just lost two, so both of them are down to four now all of a sudden. So this is why, if you're Alex, and this is why I said for Ben and Alyssa and Brooke, if they hadn't lost people and who were able to stay at four, for a little while, that these twists would come and people would lose players, right? The blood moon in the blood bath they kept saying on the episode. It came for the real show and it came for our fantasy rosters here, and that's why I said if you can just hold for a couple weeks while other people are losing, that can be an opportunity to jump up. And so Alex is still really far behind, but he's been able to hold a couple weeks, and now, Noah's down to four, Cameron's down to four. And Ellie, I think she has five or six, right? Five. So she has an opportunity to, she has an opportunity to catch up for one, and two, Alex has an opportunity to get back in the mix while he has been down for a while and losing players. People are catching up to him in terms of catching up to him in a bad way of having fewer players left. So that is Noah in fourth place, and then it is a small jump, 9 points to Mason in third place. Mason, number one point scorer for the week, had his full roster last week and lost zero players. Had Jonathan, who went on a reward, had Stephanie, who won immunity, had Dee, who won immunity, had Rick, who had a big episode with lots of confessionals. Um, Overall, great week from Mason. 90 is probably the best week that anyone's had so far. Let me double check real fast. 79, 80. Stacey had an 80. She had an 82 this week. Um, yeah, 90 is probably the best. 86 was my week one. 94, sorry. Cameron 94. And then there was an 80 year from Brooke week one. So yeah, 94 from Alex week one as well. So this is the third, tied for the second technically because there's a tie for first, but whatever. So again, one of the best weeks of this season so far from Mason, and has everyone left on his team. So Mason has a real opportunity. Although he is a good chunk behind first place, he has everybody. So it could definitely happen in the next couple of weeks. Okay. Second place is myself, and I'm only a few points ahead of Mason, so I would expect Mason has a very good chance of passing me, unless I have a very good week. I had a pretty good week. 72 points is my number two week of the year of the season. I lost to Angelina last week, and I actually did way better this week because the individual immunity and all the confessionals that came from three tribal councils and all that kind of stuff. Ozzy going to exile got me a couple extra points. Christian won immunity. Tiffany had the most confessionals she's had all season. I think she may have doubled up her number of confessional, maybe even more than that. I think she might have had six this episode, and she went on a reward. Chrissy went on a reward, right? So lots of points there for myself, but I am expecting Mason to probably pass me this week, and I'll probably fall to third. Um, and so again, anything can happen. If we get, if two people get voted off next week and I lose a couple people, I'm down all of a sudden to five or to four if I lose two. So, this game is going to be really volatile week to week if we're going to see lots of people get voted off. And so you want to build a lead, and you want to maintain your roster as long as possible. And I guess that leaves us with the number 2 point earner for the week, but the number one finisher, again, Stacy, started in last and has worked her way back to the top and had 82 points this week. She did lose Camilla, so all of us that are below her have a little silver lining there that she did lose somebody. And so now nobody has seven except for Mason. And then other than that, people have six, five, four, three, two, and one player left. But so we all need Mason to lose one or two people next week, and then we'll be on a little bit more even playing field there. But For Stacy, Christian again winning immunity, excuse me, D winning immunity. She had two winners there, and then had Ozzy who went to exile, and again like Rick had a really good week. So great week from her, keeping her first place. I would expect her to keep first place for maybe even for sure one more week, but maybe even two more weeks. She's 20 ahead of me. Um, and I'm gonna assume we're not gonna have three immunity winners next week, which again, immunity for the individual phase of the game is 6 points. I'm not gonna expect to get three more of those from the game. And she had two of them, which is a big reason why she had a great week. But um, I just think we're probably not going to see that again. So overall, the points might go down, and because she has a lead, that's good for her. So, in terms of the players' standings and where everyone's at, I went ahead and color coded everyone that made the merge and got the yellow buff. We do have our 17th, 16th, and 15th place finishers here in Camilla, Genevieve, and Colby. Genevieve still had a pretty solid amount of points. That in terms of the points for the season, she is, you know, currently by far the most out of anyone who voted out. Let me try to do some like quick looking and scanning while I am talking to you. I mean, eh, for the season is seventh in points and was, 16th place. So that will probably not stand obviously for very long, but it wouldn't surprise me if, one or two people get voted off. Like if Chrissy gets voted off next week, does she get 8 points? Probably not. Mike White had five in his exit. Q had five in his exit. The only reason why Camilla had five is because she went on a reward. She would have had three. Genevieve had four, and I think Colby had two in his exit. Um, so, could someone like an Emily, a Tiffany, a Joe, Stephanie, even a Suri get voted off this episode and get fewer than the points needed to pass Genevieve? Very definitely. Um, so $11 is probably too high to pay for Genevieve in terms of the value, but not quite like a Q, right? Or a Mike White, where you're paying 11 or 10.50 for those players and getting 30 points, 33, 35 points. 56 is, a good bit more. Again, that 21 point difference between Mike and Genevieve is the difference between myself and Stacy is 20 points, right? So that's a good chunk of points there. And I think that could show you kind of how a lot of these decisions could matter in the end. Obviously, hindsight is 2020, so no one's ever going to draft the seven best players of the season. But to me, it's just interesting to see the value. And now that it's the merge, I may also take a moment. Maybe next week I'll see how the players are doing in terms of points per dollar we spent. Um, but for now, this is where we're at. Ozzy is still in first. Christian gained on him, but is still 1 point behind. Rizzo is in the third now. He jumped up a couple spots. Coach has fallen. I think he was 30s in fourth now. Aubrey's it's just been kind of steady since she got the idol. She's just been kind of steadily just like gaining points. Rick is 57 there, so they're all pretty close. Um, in those four there, Jonathan is still pretty close. D and then Saria has been kind of in this middle area for a while. Stephanie had a big jump this week. She had, I think, 17 points, right? She had a huge week this week. So, um, she was somewhere down here in this area, and now she's up here. Tiffany had a very big week too, but she's still towards the bottom. I think she would have been like last or near last. Emily being at the last place in points out of everyone in the game is kind of surprising to me, just because of how it's like I don't understand how uh because she's been in every tribal council pretty much, right? I mean, she didn't go to the ones she can't go to while she's at tribal council this week, but other than that, she's been every week, and she's just like kind of steadily getting a few points every week. I don't even know. I think I have Emily, so I can see how many points she's had every week. Yeah, she had a big week in week three, but other than that, it's been like 4 to 8 points every single episode. So kind of a little underwhelming there. I mean, she had a pretty cheap price, $7, but um, so far not giving much for that. So I think I've kind of covered everything. So I head out of here. If you have any questions about points or anything, Here's all the information. You can pause it and see, do all the math yourself if you want to add up all the numbers for your personal score. But that's where we're at for now. So with that, I will head out of here and I will see you guys next week.